to Facebook Live as well. And so I do just want to let you guys know, if you don't want your image to be shown on Facebook, just mute yourself and then your camera feed will not send to Facebook Live. So don't worry about that. If you do have questions throughout the session, feel free to pop them into the chat and we will respond to them from there. And yeah, so while Vika is getting the Zoom, the Facebook set up, I'm just going to start sharing my screen. All right, can everybody see my slide? Yeah.
Yes.
Great. All right, everyone. Happy April. We are here today to talk about setting up simple automations to increase your group bookings. And this is being hosted by You Live to Travel. And this is in partnership with Zapier. So that's our session for today. Hopefully you guys learn a few things. We are your hosts. So I'm Jen Fine. I'm the co-founder and CEO and also the head of product for the YouLi platform. And I am joined here today by Vika, who's our community and marketing manager, and also by Claire, who is lucky enough to be in Colombia right now. I'm super jealous. And so Claire is our head of operations. So you'll be seeing her if you're opening any tickets with YouLi. And then we also have our special guest, Ellie, and she is here as our representative from Zapier. She's a Zapier consultant. Those of you who know Ellie from our videos and from working with her at YouLi, you know she used to be working with us. And so we're really, really thrilled to have her back today, representing her new company, Zapier. So just to give you a little bit of a background, YouLi is a no-code platform, and it's really designed to get everyone in your business and all your customers, whether those agents, operators, or travelers, all on the same trip page. So we make that really easy for you to ditch all of these spreadsheets and PDFs and long email chains, and we bring all the stuff that you need together into one place. So that's what YouLi does in a nutshell. If you are interested more in what we can do, definitely check out more of our videos and our webinars. Now I'm going to give Ellie a chance to talk about what Zapier is.
Hi guys, it's been a while since I've been on one of our calls and it's so nice to be back. Love YouLi so much. So, but yes, Zapier, like YouLi, is a no-code platform, and we make it really, really easy for you to automate repetitive tasks that you have to do over and over again. And you can see here, Jen's and Vika have beautifully outlined what it looks like for you to be able to set up one of these kind of automatic flows. We call them automated flows for you to set up so that you never have to, for example, you can automatically send emails, you can set up connections where someone fills out a form on your website and they automatically get pushed to your CRM. And, other, things that you have to do on a daily basis, we can help do that automatically for you. And if you want to jump to the next one, yep, cool. Some of the reasons you would want to create these flows, right, are all of the different platforms you can connect via Zapier. So you can think about connecting your email to your CRM. You can think about connecting your CRM to your, marketing email platform. And more importantly today, right, we're going to talk about how you can connect YouLi to Mailchimp, your marketing email platform. So yeah, I'll let Jen dive into it and give you a grounded example about it. So yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Ellie. So the important thing to recognize here is, of course, that YouLi and Zapier are completely different companies. And while we are connected, one of the things that you'll want to sort of pick up from this session is, when are you going to talk to YouLi? When is it a YouLi kind of question versus when is it a Zapier kind of question? And so I'll kind of touch on that throughout the piece. But if you have a question about how the data works in YouLi, what kind of data do we pass through to our Zapier integration, that's a great question for us, and you can use the help in YouLi to ask that question. But if you're getting some sort of weird error, you know, this Zap failed, or I can't turn my Zap on, or, you know, things having to do with setting up the Zaps, that would be a question that you would send through to the Zapier team, and they would be able to help you troubleshoot that. And then we have two, you know, so that you'll need a subscription with YouLi and you'll need a subscription with Zapier in order for these two platforms to talk to each other.
I'm gonna go ahead, Jen, and just let everyone know. I'm gonna pop in the chat just the help talk like link so that you can get to the Zapier one, and also like any definitions you have, because we do use some specific lingo, and if you want to dig into it while Jen's explaining too.
Perfect. All right, now I'm just going to actually jump into my demonstration. Can you guys see my browser now? So I've switched to the Zapier landing page that shows how you can connect YouLi to Mailchimp. And so as I mentioned, you'll need a YouLi account. And so when you log in, you'll see, you know, your trips here. And for those of you who haven't explored YouLi, if you create a trip on the planner side, you'll see it on your dashboard, and that will actually generate a trip page, which is where your travelers will explore and discover your itineraries, and then they can register their interest here. And so this data gets captured into YouLi, and it gets collected and stored per trip. So we think of ourselves as sort of a trip CRM. But of course, you may want to, and will likely want to, communicate to those people, not just about those trips, but also generally on your marketing list. And so if you want to collect that information to do general marketing, not trip-specific marketing, then you'll want to use a tool like Mailchimp. And so you'll need an account, which in this case, I've got this Mailchimp account, and I've set up a YouLi list. They call them audiences, but this is basically a mailing list. So you'll need one of those to make that connection. And so once you have both of those and you have a Zapier account, so you'll need 3 accounts, the Zapier account plus the YouLi plus the Mailchimp, and then you can select your trigger. So in Zapier language, there's a trigger that starts an automated flow. And so we have published 2 triggers at the moment. One of them is a new registration on a trip. So if you have one special trip that you're running and you want to put that on a special list in Mailchimp, you would say new registration on a trip, and then you would get to pick which trip that is, and then you get to pick what list it goes to. But in today's demonstration, we're actually going to choose any owned trip. So that means no matter which of the many trips that I have here in YouLi, if anyone registers on any one of them, then I want it to trigger an automated flow or a Zap. And I want that to do something. I want it to do an action. So what are my actions? Well, my actions are all of these. These are published by Mailchimp. And so one of the things that I can do is add update subscriber. So that's kind of the logic. And basically every time you make a Zap, you're always picking your trigger and you're picking your action. That's the way you kind of get started with your most basic Zap. So then I'm going to click connect YouLi to Mailchimp. And Zapier is going to be super friendly, like it is with a lot of these sort of preset templates. And it's kind of generate a sort of an outline of a Zap for me that has those 2 pieces. Of course, you can just make a Zap. You can make an empty Zap and kind of make it directly, but I like to do it this way because it sort of fills everything out for me. Then you want to make sure you name your Zap. So this is our April demo. And so then the first thing it prompts you to do, and this is what's really great about the way that Zapier works, is it is an automation flow, and it kind of takes you through this journey that you sort of have to fill out each of the little pieces. And so you don't have to necessarily understand everything that's going on. You just sort of go step by step, right? So the first thing you do is you link your YouLi account. Now, you probably won't have one already connected here, so you'll have to scroll down and connect a new account. Because I do a lot of these, I have many accounts, but you'll just connect a new account. And then once it's connected, you'll pick it from the list. From there, you'll know everything's going well because it'll give you a continue button. Generally, that's the way that Zapier works, is that it, you know that you're kind of on the right track when a new blue button appears and you can click on it. And so as you're going through this, you'll kind of get used to the way that Zapier takes you through the flows. So here you can see that it's found a test, right? So yay, found a registration. So you can see the different sample data that it pulls in. So if you have a trip on YouLi already that has registration data, that has people on it, then those will get pulled in here, and you can use this as a way to test your trigger. So remember that we're currently in a test mode, right? So this is data that exists already, and it's the way that you're using this data is to help you figure out how to connect these two systems. So this shows you all the data that we pass through to Zapier. So we pass through the full name, the email, the phone number. We give you the URL of the image that they've uploaded, if they have provided one. We give you the mini bio if they have provided one, and a registration status, so whether or not they have, if they're registered, invited, or declined, when we got that registration, and whether or not they left a note. So like there's a little box when they register. If they've entered any dietary requirements, and also if there's a planner note. So if when you added them, you put a note on there, on the planner side of it, that will be there. And as you can see, there's additional information, package name, the room number, and then some key information like trip ID, which is a unique number. So this is really good if you ever need to do any kind of mapping between systems that's very specific. Trip name, trip alias, and a few other important fields here. We're not going to go into all those details today, but the important thing is that you can see all the data that comes through. Now, this is something that YouLi provides. So here's a great point to think about YouLi versus Zapier. So all the stuff that you see in this box here is all some stuff that we control what data is here. So if you look here and you say, oh, why isn't this data here? That would be a question for YouLi. So you'd open a ticket with us and we would talk to you about how you can get access to the data that you're looking for. But if you had a question about, if you had an issue outside of that box, kind of in this general area, that would be more like a Zapier platform question. So thankfully, it's all looking good. And so I'm going to click the continue button. And now it's jumped me down to the next one. And it's put a nice little green tick mark on there, which is amazing. Now, if I did want to go back and I thought, oh, let me check on this, I can always click to edit. But otherwise, I continue on. So now I had already previously selected Mailchimp and I had selected the action. So it's already preset for me. So I'm going to click continue. And then I'm going to choose my Mailchimp account. And then again, it's going to sort of think about it. And again, it's going to turn blue when things are good. So again, we're kind of going through that workflow. And now I get some choices. So you'll notice that depending on what kind of event, app, action, trigger, like depending on what you've chosen, you get different prompts at this stage. So here we get Mailchimp specific prompts. So Mailchimp needs to know, what audience am I mapping this to? So I pick YouLi. And then the next field, so notice that's required and this is required. So the apps will tell you what information has to be set up in order for these apps to work. So it's really helpful like that. So then you click into this box, and I love this. This is my favorite part about the way that Zapier works. It expands and shows you all the data, and you'll see that it's got this nice friendly YouLi icon next to all of this data. And that tells you that this is all data. So remember, you saw that big block of text that I was walking you through before, and you probably thought, oh, that's really hard to read. Well, now Zapier has actually done this lovely thing and broken it up into all of these different fields for you. And it's showing you what the example data is. And so what am I looking for here? Well, I'm looking for an email address, right? So I'm going to type into my search box, email, and then I'm going to pick the email field. And so now it's basically what I've told it to do is I've told it to take the email address that's coming from the YouLi connection, from the YouLi app, and put it into the subscriber email field of Mailchimp. And this might be a little bit confusing for people who aren't developers, but this is just an example. So the case2@genfind.com, that's just the email address of my sample data. It's not always going to use that address. It's going to use the email field And it's just that case2@genfind.com is the example that we're testing with right now. So it just makes it really easy for you to know, like, yes, this is the field that I want to use. I want to use the email field. So then you're going to go through each of the fields that Zapier requires. Now, these are the only two that are required. So you don't have to do anything with the rest of these fields. So I'm not going to touch these. Those are sort of more advanced features of Mailchimp that you can choose to use or not. But I am going to jump down to the first name field, and I'm actually just going to pop the name field in there. You'll note that the YouLi platform has a full name field instead of a first name, last name. And so the easiest thing for you to do here would be to just make a full name field in your Mailchimp list and then match it to that. But there are more advanced ways if you did want to split that field apart, and we can talk about that later. For now, we're just going to leave it as first name. I'm going to skip all the address information, but I am actually going to pull in the phone number. So if you do collect phone number on your registration form, you can definitely pull that data in. And so from here, now again, I've done all my required fields, so my button is blue. If I hadn't done all my required fields, this button would not be blue, so I'd have to scroll back up and check on those. All right, so now I'm in my test action. So now Zapier is telling me that it wants to send a subscriber to Mailchimp, right? So this is a test. This is not real. This is just making sure that everything that I've just done is what I intended. But do recognize that when you're testing with test data, this email address is what is going to get added to your Mailchimp list. So do make sure that if this is a real person, that is actually what you want to have happen, and that you don't necessarily have a trigger happening in Mailchimp that would send them an email when you don't want that to happen. So I do recommend when you're setting these up to be sure and test with your own email addresses. So put some samples into your YouLi trip to test that with. So it's just showing me all the data that it's going to pass through, and it has two choices. It says test and review or test and continue. I'm going to choose to test and continue because I feel like this is going to work really well. And because it's changed to say turn on Zap, that means that Zapier thinks this test worked. So and in fact, here it says a subscriber was sent to Mailchimp. So it's telling me that that should be there. So I'm going to just jump over here and I'm going to check that, that it did actually get added to Mailchimp. So we're just going to reload my audience list here. And look at that. So I've got my email address, my name, and my phone number has come through as subscribed. So that test actually added onto my Mailchimp list. And depending on what logic you have set up in Mailchimp, that might have triggered a campaign, it might have triggered a transactional message. But in this case, I've just added them to the list. That's all I've done. So great. So now I've confirmed Zapier is happy with this, and I've confirmed that Mailchimp actually shows the data. So I think I'm ready to turn my Zap on. So this is a really, really important step. If you do not click this button, you are not done. Your Zap is not running and nothing will happen, right? So everything that we just did, that was all just setup work and just testing. But in order to make it so that you can set up your automation, walk away, and just trust that all the data that is added to YouLi gets added to Mailchimp, you have to click the turn on Zap button. So you'll know that it's on once it sort of prompts up to tell you to share. And you'll see this green on button. So that's how you know your automation is now running. So I would recommend that you now go and do a live test. So remember, the test that we just did here was kind of like a manual test with existing data that was already on your trip. But we want to do a real test. So we want to actually go to our trip page. And as a traveler, we want to click the book now button or whatever your call to action is. And we're going to put this in. We're actually going to, we'll register Ivy on this, on my domain. And we're going to click to confirm, which we're going to come back to because you'll want to make sure that you have confirmation and you communicate clearly to your travelers what your privacy policy is, and that they are not only registering their interest in this trip, but they're also going to be added to your mailing list. So you'll definitely want to modify your consent terms here to make that clear. And depending on your jurisdiction, that will be worded in different ways. So then I'm going to click that Book Now button. And once that is registered on the YouLi side, it is actually what's called an instant trigger. So, instant, I mean, it's internet time, right? So basically, you don't have to wait an hour. It just takes, a few minutes for the systems to connect, and then you should actually see it coming through Zapier and showing up on Mailchimp. So let me see if the internet is working for me today. Then I'm going to reload this page, and I'm going to see Ivy. So that's exactly what you want to see happen, right? So that is the magic of Zapier, right? So the magic is that I just automated the connection between the YouLi platform and the Mailchimp platform in about, what was that, 10 minutes maybe, right? And I didn't write any code, right? So that's what we talk about when we talk about a no-code platform. So YouLi is a no-code platform. You can set up your trips and make that registration form without any code. And then Mailchimp's a no-code platform. You can send your campaigns out without writing any code. And Zapier is a no-code platform that connects those two so that your data collected from YouLi is magically passed over to Mailchimp. And then you can have automations running in YouLi, you can have automations running in Mailchimp, and you can connect these two and coordinate those using a platform like Zapier. So I'm just going to pause to see if there are any questions based on all of what I just sort of walked through. Because I know, for some people, hopefully that's just like, oh my gosh, I get it. And for some people that might feel a little bit overwhelming. So do we have any questions?
John, we don't have any questions right now, but I kind of wanted to confirm that when I first saw that seemed like a lot. And it took 2 or 3 times of doing this. And now we're saying like, thanks God we have Zapier, that all of those systems are connected, automated, and we set out the email sequence at one point and it just goes straight over and you don't even have to think about this. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and actually that's a great point. We actually use Zapier to automate a lot of our business processes. So we don't happen to use Mailchimp, but we do use Hubspot, and we use Zapier to connect connect the collection of data from YouLi, from LinkedIn, from Facebook. So because no matter what, you can't literally have only one platform, right? Like we all try to sort of consolidate down to as few platforms as we can. But in the end, you will end up with multiple platforms in your tech stack. And Zapier is a great way of keeping those all in sync, because you don't want to have to be manually going in and downloading your lists off of your YouLi trips and loading them manually into Mailchimp. So, I mean, I think I'm going to take the fact that there's no questions as a sign that you guys.
There's one more question, Jen. Sorry to interrupt. The question is from Auckland, and it's saying, if in Mailchimp I have a field called trip link, will Zapier pull the link to a field in Mailchimp?
That is an excellent question. So yes. So I'm just going to show you here. We have the magic link. So this magic link is actually for the
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So the question is, so let me just jump in and actually show you. On the YouLi side, we have a concept called magic links, and these are trip links. And so, for example, on this trip, I can get Ivy's magic link here, right? So these are the links that are sent out via email from the YouLi platform that allows your travelers to access their trip pages securely without a password. So this is what we call magic links, and these are included in the data that we pass through to Zapier. And so if you have a field created on Mailchimp, So that's going to be under setup action. Then it will appear here. So it'll appear down here. And so, for example, if I were to go to Mailchimp now on that audience and add the field trip link or magic link, and then I came back here and click refresh fields, it's going to go talk to Mailchimp and pull up that new field that I've added. So let me just pretend that I've done that. And then I can pull up the magic link, and then I can include the link here. Right. And so the same way that I did phone number, you would do the same thing with the magic link. So any of the fields that come in from YouLi, you can map to any of the fields that you have in Mailchimp. Did that answer that question?
We got an awesome from Auckland, so it's you there. The answer is yes. And we do have one more question from Eleanor. She's curious about what Zaps we use with Hubspot.
Yeah, that is a very good question. So integrating with a more advanced CRM like HubSpot definitely takes a little bit more time than we have to completely cover in this session. And if you do want a private one-on-one where we can sort of address your specific questions, that is something that you can book in with us, and we'll do a consulting session where we show you how to run through, how do you automate the things that are happening in YouLi and connecting that into your CRM, because the specifics there depend on your process in your CRM. Do you use deals? Do you leave notes? Do you assign tasks to your staff in HubSpot? So you can do a lot of things in your, and in fact, you can chain them together. So just a little, you can chain together in the same Zap. So if you use HubSpot and Mailchimp, for example, you can have a new registration in YouLi, add that record to HubSpot, and then go on to add it to Mailchimp. But you'll see within HubSpot, these are all the Zaps that you can do, right? So as you can see, it's a long list, and you can get quite lost in the Zapier world, just discovering all of those kinds of things, which is why we offer the consulting session to help you narrow in on exactly what you need to do. And in fact, I'll just give you a quick tip on HubSpot. If you want to leave a note on a record, it's an engagement. So that took me a little bit of time to figure out. And this is the trick with Zapier and the apps, is that every app has different language for things. And so you will want to do tests where you go in and you connect to your HubSpot, and then you say, oh, well, I want to add a task, or I want to add a note. And then you have to discover what language do they use inside the Zapier system in order to do that. And so here you can see an engagement type is a note or a task or a meeting or an email or a call. So they've kind of buried note and task underneath the concept of engagement. So that's the kind of advanced stuff with those more sophisticated CRMs. But it's just a matter of taking the time. So, as Vika said, it was overwhelming at first, but once you get into it and once you figure out these little tricks, and once you get these done and you click that on button, then it just runs. And it is really amazing to have these things automated. Excuse me. Hopefully I answered that enough. I know I feel like we should do a session specifically about integrating with HubSpot, because it does have some little tricks to it. Do I have any other questions?
We have questions in general of what other companies and platforms Zapier automates with and integrates with, including companies like Client Base is a CRM. And I just wanted to share what Ellie was sharing with us, is the page where you can see all the partners that.
Go ahead, Ellie.
I just linked to it in the chat, guys. You should, if you click into the zapier.com/apps, you can actually see all the apps we connect with, and you can search for the one you would like. And then you can see YouLi's page too. So if you search for YouLi, right, YouLi will pop up as well. And you can dig around and play around there as well to figure out how to kind of innovate these apps with these different platforms in YouLi.
Yes, you can explore at the top level here by clicking on the apps. If you're looking for the things that YouLi connects to, then you can come into our the YouLi integrations page and then click on connect to 3,000 plus apps. And then from there you can kind of see, and then it takes you back into this flow here. Or if you don't want to build, but you just want to explore, then you'll probably stay out on the sort of marketing site here and just basically go through their entire app store. And so you can come in here and search. So, one of the other things you can do is if you've got a sheet, like, you're still using Excel sheets and you have a process that you don't want to disturb, but you still want to add those into YouLi, for example. So when you add a record into a Google Sheet, you want it to automatically register them onto a YouLi trip. You can actually do that from here. So you can have the trigger is actually you adding a record in a Google Sheet, and that can add a registration to a YouLi trip. So the example we did with Mailchimp was the other way around. We had a registration on a trip page adding to Mailchimp, but of course you can be maybe collecting registrations on another platform, but you want to add that to a YouLi trip. So you can do that as well. Great questions. And, this is why we're partners with Zapier. They expose, a huge amount of functionality to all of these different platforms. And as you can see, there are thousands and thousands of them.
Basically, right now, YouLi can connect to everything, which is like amazing and like magic. So.
And of course, we are going to be adding more actions and triggers as we grow. So that's the other thing to kind of keep an eye out. We're currently doing registration in both directions, and we are going to be expanding that into payments and task completion. So you'll be able to automate even more of that between your different platforms. So one thing I wanted to kind of demonstrate for you is actually a slightly more complicated example. And I've sort of made this one before. And so the sample one that I did live with you, I had a trigger and an action. So when this happened, add it to Mailchimp, always. But what we should really do is actually add a filter, right? And so because you may not want all your data to come through. So for example, if you add people manually through the planner interface, which is here in the YouLi platform. So if you add a person here, instead of having them register on their public trip page, then they will actually get added with a tracking source of upload. And so it's either single upload or bulk upload, depending on whether or not you bulk uploaded them or uploaded them one at a time. And so if you have a process that says you don't want those people to get added to your marketing list because you're adding them manually, then you can actually exclude those people. So you can actually say, only continue if the tracking source does not contain the word upload. So this is a sort of more advanced capability, but if you understand kind of logic, then you can see this opens up a huge world for you in terms of being able to filter, to say just don't proceed if it doesn't meet this qualification. And so you can do that based on any of the fields. So it could also be that you're running a special trip, for example, and you don't want that trip. So if let's say contains Jordan. So maybe you don't want to load your Jordan trip data, right? So, only continue if trip name contains Jordan. You only want your Jordan trips to pass through to Mailchimp. So you can change it to say, if the trip name contains Jordan, then continue. Otherwise, do not. So that's another way that you can filter out that. So remember that you just need to think about it logically and think about when do you want it to continue? Do you want it to continue based on the trip? Do you want it to continue based on the source? So maybe you only want if the source contains Facebook, for example. So you only want people who've registered on Facebook to be added to your Mailchimp list. So the point of it is that there's a lot of flexibility here. And this is the kind of thing that you'll learn as you expand your knowledge with Zapier. So you're going to start with just trigger, action. Then you might add in a filter. And then if you get really fancy, you might start to add in a format, like you want to change something, you want to change a date, you want to change, you want to split a full name into a first name and last name. You might put a delay in, things like that. And then when you get super fancy, you can do a path. And when you do a path, you actually split and do different things based on you. So instead of filtering being on or off, you actually have two different paths. So you say, if it's a Jordan trip, add it to this list. Otherwise, add it to this list. So that's the even more advanced thing that you can do there. And I do just want to quickly show you in the Zap History. So as you're setting up your Zaps and learning how to use the platform, you're going to want to review your Zap History. And so here I've got the Zaps that have run through for the one that I set up. You'll see I have a bunch of successes, and then I have this filtered one. So that was the one where I added somebody through the planner interface, and it hit my filter, and so it didn't run. So it's telling me, yeah, I saw that person, but I didn't add them. So if you ever have a situation where you're looking in Mailchimp and saying, I don't see my data, where's my data? You want to come into your Zap History and see maybe they were filtered, or maybe there was an error. And so in this case, you'll want to open that and you'll want to look at the error. And in this case, it was because the email address was not provided. And so that's why there was an error. So these are the more advanced things that you'll discover as you go through it. But as you saw from the original demo, if you're just doing the really simple connection, it just takes you about 10 minutes to set it up, and then your automation is going. All right. I think I've covered all that I can cover in today's session, unless I have missed any questions.
We covered most of the questions. Yes, the only one that I'm seeing in discussion is right now, it's Travijoy and Travify covered in Zapier and Zapier Partners. And Ellie double check with me, but if I'm wrong, but it doesn't look like it.
Oh,
yeah, I'll look too.
Yes. Oh, Travify. Looks like no. Traveljoy. Yeah.
No.
Unfortunately not. So the way that apps get into Zapier is that companies like YouLi or Travify choose to make apps. So we invested in our connection with Zapier. So as a partner of Zapier, we created an app so that we will show up here and you can connect us to any of the other platforms that are also using Zapier. So if you really want them to, I would suggest you pester Traveljoy and Travify and tell them to get their Zapier app created for you. Alternatively, I might suggest switching off of those platforms onto YouLi. So if you have any more questions about how you might be able to use Zapier to really automate your workflows while you're using YouLi, and we can dig into some of these kinds of situations like HubSpot, there might be other ways that we could sort of explore if you are using other platforms that aren't using Zapier, that we might be able to kind of give you some workarounds to still plug them in. So we can give you one-on-one support on that. You just go to this URL, the Travel Tech Consulting, and just book in a time slot with us. So that's just $60 US for the hour. It's a really good deal because we're really interested in seeing you guys get focused on getting your trips up. And this is the perfect time. This is when you want to invest in your operations and your automations, because the travel boom is coming. We don't know when it is, but when it comes, it's going to be a flood. And you will want as much automation in place as you possibly can. So, so we look forward to seeing what kind of Zaps you guys make on your own. And we are totally happy to jump onto calls with you guys and do one-on-one sessions.
I think
Thank you.
Zapier has some attractive pricing. I don't know if you want to review that at all. I know it's on the website, but I think it's really nice. It's different tiers depending on the needs you have.
That's a really good point. Can you guys still see my screen?
Yep.
Yeah, so I think you can get started with a, yeah, I think you can get started with a free tier that just gives you 100 tasks per month, and then it moves up from there. So, you know, it's really nice because you can just get started and test and play around. And then while nothing's happening, you're not really paying anything. And then as your business grows, you'll just pay more as you consume more and more tasks. So, and you'll get a little message that that tells you, you know, when you're about to run into your limit, so that you'll know if you need to up your package size.
Jen, I just want to address Auckland's question. You asked Auckland for like other automations you can do with YouLi to different platforms. And because Facebook does connect with Zapier, you can connect YouLi to Facebook easily. So you can create those other innovative ways of, if someone signs up to a YouLi trip, adding them to a relevant Facebook group that you manage. I don't know what IFTTT stands for. So
oh, if this, then that, then that. Yeah. So
gotcha.
We haven't set up an if this, then that, but it's basically the free version of Zapier. But it should work with our APIs. So obviously the API that is behind our connection with Zapier is also public. So if you are using a system that's other than Zapier to do your automation, just get in touch with us and we'll see whether or not you can just use our APIs instead, which is basically a sort of a lower level way of getting access to the same automation that Zapier is exposing in a sort of friendly UI. Great question, though. Well, amazing, guys. Look, this is really interesting stuff. You know, we're sort of moving into a whole new world with being able to automate. You know, to be able to automate things that previously would have required, you know, really expensive developer, you know, to sort of make that happen, and then the maintenance work of that, you'd have to contact them to fix any issues, and you can now actually have complete control and transparency over where is your data, what systems is it moving between, and you can learn with it. Like the main thing I always say to people about tech stacks is, you know, it's not built in a day. You know, you start with a core platform or core set of platforms, and then you add on things as you go. And Zapier is a really great way to connect those together, so that, you know, if YouLi is your core trip platform and then you add some Facebook campaigns, then you can link that with Zapier, and then that just becomes a more solid piece. If you decide, Facebook's not working for me, you can shut that Zap down, and you can switch on to, you know, a LinkedIn campaign, and then you can automate that again using Zapier and connecting to your YouLi. So it's very dynamic, and you can turn them on and turn them off, so you can pause them if it's not working, and you can come back to it. And so don't feel like you have to get it all done and all perfect. Definitely think of this as an iterative process where you're adding things, you're testing them, you're seeing what works, and then you just keep building on that, and you just remove any tests that didn't work, and you just add more of the things that are working. So amazing, guys. I really appreciate you guys jumping on and wanting to learn more about automation. It is the new era that we're in, and it's going to empower you to grow your businesses faster than you ever could before. So we're really happy to be able to offer this capability to you guys. And we look forward to seeing what kind of Zaps you create. Please feel free to open questions on the YouLi platform, and feel free to follow the link that Ellie provided if you have any questions for the Zapier team. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.